Okay, so I've had several folks, commenters, asking about the use of the K processors, the 9700K, 8700K, etc., in the G4 and G5. And it was an option that you could get when you ordered or purchased for the first time um, the particular units. So people are asking, hey, what is it going to take for me to upgrade? Maybe I started out with a like a just a general 8500T or something like that. What's it going to take? So I thought we could kind of go over the needs. Um, and I happen to have this guy. Let's see if I can get in frame here. This was from a inherited gaming motherboard. This is an i7-9700K. And in the past, I did try in one of my old videos to see if I could get it to work in the G4, but I was getting the beeps. I believe the reason for that was because I didn't have a 150 watt power supply, which I now have in my possession, an actual 150 watt HP power supply. This is one that would have come with, if you were getting what they called the 95 watt G4, G5. Because, of course, you got the 35 watt, you got the 65 watt. They also had a 95 watt. But in order to use the 95 watt, that, of course, talks about more about the processor itself. And you needed this beast, which is huge, this 150 watt. I mean, the normal power supply is more like, about this big. So, but we're going to try it with this one and see how that works. I'm also going to talk about then what you would need in order to get it to work in terms of a heat sink and the beast of a heat sink that you're going to need for it. I'm going to show some pictures later, but essentially what ends up with this heat sink, if you can find it, is that it's all in kind of two piece. Well, it's essentially one piece, but it kind of spread out over it. You've got the normal thing here, all copper. It then comes over here. It is in another part of the heat sink and a fan. And then, of course, you have your normal fan. So I'm going to see if I could find some pics to show what that looks like and what you would be into as far as trying to get that to work. So let's first take out and swap the, right now I think I've got maybe an 8600T, something like that, maybe an 8500T in this, and we'll put in the 9700K with the 150 watt power supply and see if we can even get it to boot up. Okay, let's see if we could get this heat sink out without having to take the caddy out. Move that better into frame. There we go. And as you can tell, this is the real, low end heat sink for the 35 watt systems. It's just aluminum, nothing special. Okay. All right, I think I'm going to have to take out this. Yep, I'm going to have to take out the drive caddy first. So let's get that. I'm going to first take out the SATA connector. Lately, I've been doing a lot of G3 stuff, And with it, you wouldn't have to worry about the caddy. But I think this one, I don't know if it's real visible, but right here, there's a little catch for um, the caddy. And so if you want to take out that heat sink, you got to take out the caddy. Just a couple screws, not a big deal. Move that out of the way. There we go. Now we can, now this should lift out. Okay, just a couple more screws. Or, almost. Oop. We're a little intertwined here with the fan. Probably should have, there we go, disconnected or disentangled the wire first. So we'll just kind of put this to the side. We're not going to be we're just going to boot to BIOS just to make sure that we can actually see it identified as being a 9700K. That guy puts out so much heat, and of course we're not going to have a heat sink. I don't want to do anything as far as testing the processor and so forth. I don't want to overheat the system on that. All right, let's take out the existing processor. And here comes the i7-9700K. So not only are we going to a K processor, but we're also going to an i7. Let's lock that down. Okay. Just make sure that we're in there nicely. Okay. All right. Let me get the power hooked up and video, and we'll see if we can boot. Okay. I'm connecting the 150 watt power supply. And gonna try turning it on. Oh, that's not good. That's usually an indicator that it doesn't like the processor, or that the power needs aren't there. All right, let's kill it. Well, not sure what the issue with that is. I was hoping that was the key. I'm pretty sure that it's going to allow for the 9700K. Now, this is a G4. I know that it will work with the 9500T. I could try it in the G5 to see, but I'm going to do a little more research on this. All right, I put the 8500T back in, and I'm going to see if it boots up with this power supply. Make sure it's nothing weird about the power supply. Nope, no beeping there. And let's see. Oh, it's going in. Yep, it goes into the startup menu. Okay, let's shut this down and see what else, and perhaps if we need to try it in the G5. Okay, so let's go into the system information. Boy, it's starting to warm up already. There it is, i7-9700K CPU, 3.6 gigahertz. All right, I'm going to get out of here because that fan's starting to go, and that means the system's really starting to heat up here. So let's shut her down. Okay, so let's go into the system information. Boy, it's starting to warm up already. There it is, i7-9700K CPU, 3.6 gigahertz. All right, I'm going to get out of here because that fan's starting to go, and that means... Okay, so we saw that that this i7-9700K was only going to work in the i5, and I believe the reason for that is because once you go to the i7 with the G5, that's when you start getting 8-core instead of 6-core. So it maybe the G4, if you look in the specs for it, there aren't any processors listed that give you 8-core. They're all, the highest you can go is 6-core. So if you wanted on your G5 to have 8-core, if that was one of the reasons why you were going to the K processor, most likely probably not for that, because the K processor is more for people doing overclocking and really wanting to get the most speed out. But you could go with the 9700T, and then that would give you, just a normal T processor. That does give you 8-core right there. But if you did go to the 9700K, you could get your 8-core and you're going 3.6 gigahertz instead of 2. I mean, that's quite a jump in juice. You could all go total hardcore and go to an i9, and then that gets you as high as 5 gigahertz with the boost. So that's, if that's really what you want to go for. But if you're going to go for the K processor, you are in essence now doing a 95 watt system instead of a 65 watt. So one option is to, now this is a bad example because this is a 95 watt G4, but I wanted to talk about things like the power supply and the heatsink, and those are very similar between the two, the G4 and G5, and just really hard to find on eBay any of the K processor ones for sale. So I thought I'd use this one as an example. So you will need the 150 watt power supply. When I was looking, it is supposed to be 19.5 volt, and then it's like 7.7 amps. And that will give you the, because I've seen some that were 19 volt and then the amperage was higher. And I've also seen where the same unit is called the same. But in doing my research on what shows up as far as what's for sale, or I should say when these 95 watt units were sold, that seems to be the 19.5 volt is the one to go for. So you definitely are going to need that. You are going to need at least something that's got the ventilation here. I guess you could take a 65 watt system and start out with that, as long as since it already has that. And if you'll notice in here, I wish I had a better, I'll show you in a sec a picture of the heatsink. I wish there was one that showed what it looked like inside, but this particular listing doesn't have it. But you'll notice this has 2 fans. So up here is where the CPU would be. This is kind of the system fan that usually covers the RAM. And then you've got this over here, which is actually part of a heatsink that that kind of flows from here over to here. I think that's what this color that you're seeing here is part of. And let me show you what the heatsink actually looks like. So here you go. you have to kind of imagine this is the side that doesn't have the CPU. This is where normally your drive cage would go. So of course you're going to lose out on that. Um, you may be able to still put an NVMe, but I doubt you can do the one underneath here. You're probably going to have to do the NVMe on the side. Under here is where you would have the actual CPU. Up here is where you would have the fan that covers the RAM. So this is a monster, and so I've looked to try to find this for sale by itself, and I've seen it going for 100 plus. Haven't seen any for sale on eBay. So here's a picture of what it looks like on the inside, and you can see that how that heat sink, here's the sort of the main traditional one. Here's that fan, and then here's that additional heat sink. So that, and then, okay, that's where the screw connects. I was wondering where that other one was. It looks like so, in essence, where normally the caddy would connect, and then you've got the this connector, which is often used for the I think for if you have the graphics processor, or that's how this fan connects. Okay, so at least we have an idea of how much space, and wow, it doesn't look like you could be able to really fit a whole lot underneath there. So you'll see here the model number for this whole combination is L31403-01, and I have not seen that on eBay. And I've also looked for the particular pieces here, but I have seen it from other sources here and there, and it was running $100 plus if you could even find it. So that's one thing. So that's why it may make more sense to actually get a G5 95 watt, and even that's hard to find if you can, and again, this is the G4 95 watt. So you're going to need the 150 watt power supply. You're going to need a unit that's got the ventilation. You're going to need that heat sink in order to dissipate the stuff. So you really have to think about, do I want all that in order to be able to have the K processor? I have a feeling that they just weren't that popular in terms of corporations wanting to buy it, and that probably in most cases they probably went for a larger, maybe the small form factor ones, or other types of units, for I don't know, engineering, hardcore CAD stuff. And so there probably weren't a lot out there, and so consequently there's not a lot in the aftermarket to find them. But it's always interesting to do a little bit of trying to soup up your rod, so to speak, and make it a little faster. The other consideration is just also the price of the CPU. So here I've got the i7-9700K. This is about the cheapest I could find, 120, and that's if you can find it. They sell a lot of the plain 9700s, but that K processor, it's just hard to find, or you've got to try to do a bid on it. You may have a little bit better luck there. If you instead were looking maybe for that T processor, you might, you're still going to spend a good amount of money there on even that one. But that's why a lot of these things, it's always a balance, of doing your own upgrade versus trying to find something that's already got everything working together. I don't know, losing out on the drive caddy, losing out on potentially a second NVMe, I don't know if you know that's really going to be the best. I checked the service manual. It doesn't specifically call out, but I can't imagine being able to put another NVMe under here. And this looks a lot like the space that they have the optional graphics card or GPU that you can add. And I'm pretty sure I saw something that said, hey, once you do that, you can't put in the second NVMe. Now, obviously, this guy says that it does have an NVMe. Well, that's probably the one that's along here. So at least you know you've got that. But that's another thing. So if you end up, now you're down to just one drive, that's may or may not be limiting, but something to think about in terms of the overall impact in order to get that extra juice.